Okay.
So I'll give it 30 seconds from here, Taylor. All right, everyone, I'm going to begin. So good afternoon and welcome to all of our participants today to our Southeast Region A4LE webinar titled Preparing Your Schools for Reopening, Cleaning, Custodians, and Communication. My name is Ciarochi, and I'm currently the Southeast A4LE Region President and will serve as your commentator. I'm also joined by several others who will be serving as panelists and introduced in a moment. Our goal with today's webinar originated a few weeks ago when we as a group realized that many of our members were reaching out for assistance in gathering best practices. And we are all embarking in this new normal as it relates to student instruction models and how our facilities play a role with the CDC, local and state requirements. As our school systems continue to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, we know that every district is facing both challenges and opportunities when it comes to reopening of our schools. As a result of this idea, we're pleased to share that we have over 138 registered participants, and many are jumping in as I speak, not only from the Southeast region, but they're from other states outside of our region. Today's audience consists of K-12 instruction and facility planners, architects, and numerous consultants serving in our K-12 schools. It is our intent today to provide an overview and details as schools prepare to reopen in some form in a matter of weeks or even months in some cases, as some embark on virtual learning. Administrators need practical, actionable advice to create safer environments for our students, teachers, and staff. And this panel discussion will provide strategies for building trust within your community through transparency and communication, working with your custodians to implement facility cleaning plans, minimizing high-touch areas, and addressing budget impacts of these changes. Our hope is that it will create questions that our panelists can share their expertise and thoughts on as you think about the custodial challenges that you're facing in the opening of your school buildings. I would now like to provide a brief introduction and overview of our panelists today. First, we have Charles Chuck Saylors, who is a trustee for the School District of Greenville County in South Carolina. Chuck is the Vice President for Construction Management Division of MB Con Construction Company based out of Columbia, South Carolina. He has previously served as the A4LE President of the South Carolina Chapter and Southeast Region. He presently serves as the Southeast Director for our A4LE International Association. We have Bain Stewart, who is the Coordinator of Building Services with Greenville County Public Schools in Greenville, South Carolina. Their building services staff consists of more than 600 employees. They maintain the physical aspects of more than 100 facilities consisting of more than 12 million square feet. And their primary job is to ensure that the facilities are clean, safe, and well-maintained to enhance our children's learning environments. We have Paul Boney, who serves as the K-12 practice leader and senior vice president with LS3P, and is a current member of the LS3P board of directors. Paul is a third-generation architect with diverse experience in K-12, higher ed, state, civic, and private projects. He's the current president-elect of our association for the Southeast region, and he has served as a 2018 president of the North Carolina A4LE chapter. We have Taylor Morris, who works with LS3P's K-12 teams across 8 offices, providing ongoing research to advance K-12 design. Her work focuses on K-12 environments and how they can positively impact children and teachers alike. On behalf of the panelists today, we would also like to express our sincere gratitude for all the additional work Taylor has put into providing the webinar today. And last, myself. Ciarochi, and I serve as the Associate Superintendent for Prince William County Schools in Northern Virginia. I work with facilities, custodial, new construction, land acquisition, transportation, and school nutrition. In addition to serving the Southeast Region's A4LE president, I've also served previously as the president of the Virginia chapter. So before our presentation, I would like to briefly turn it over to Taylor, who will provide an overview on the Zoom platform so that everyone participating today can maximize their experience with its features. Taylor, turn it over to you.
All right, hey everybody, let's first make sure that you can see the presentation. Right now, you should see a soccer ball in the top left corner. Now you should see one in the bottom right corner. You will be able to ask questions throughout the presentation. To do so, place your cursor below the finger and you can submit a question by selecting the Q&A button. Lastly, don't worry about looking for the mute or video button. As an attendee of this webinar, you are automatically muted and your video is automatically off.
So with today's webinar, we're going to use the following format. Our panelists will provide an overview of the presentation, and while it's being presented, we're encouraging you to submit questions using the question and answer feature that Taylor just showed you. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to call through the posted questions and ask the panelists as many questions as possible during our 1 hour time slot. Our disclaimer is merely that we do not have all the answers, but we're going to do our best to keep our responses global in nature, knowing that each of our participants today may have state or local jurisdiction guidelines and requirements. So with that being said, I'm going to turn our presentation over to Chuck Saylor to give us introduction into working with community support and inclusion.
Thank you, Al, and good afternoon, everyone. We want to take the opportunity to thank each of you for participating in today's conversation, and we hope that you find it informative and useful in your daily activities. Part of today's conversation is going to be related to communicating with your community. As a school board trustee, I see quite often a lot of parents and community leaders that just simply do not understand some of the back of the house activities that take place when we're dealing with issues like COVID-19 and returning to school. There's a lot of uncertainty in the community. There's a lot of fear among parents as to whether or not their students will be returning to school and it being a safe and secure environment. So one of the things that we wanted to share with you today are some of the best practices and ideas that have been assembled that you can take back and use in your school districts or divisions, or as a professional in the design community or in the school services community, share with your clients. Taylor? So, question comes quite often, why do we need to communicate? When you're facing such issues as COVID-19 and all things related to reopening of school, you want to do everything you can to build a level of trust and understanding in the community. So when it comes to the cleaning, the touch points, and the security of a safe environment of a building from a health standpoint, many of our parents and community leaders, as I said earlier, do not see the valuable work that is being done by our staffs behind the scenes. You want to take an opportunity at every instance that you can to make sure that the community understands that these activities that we're discussing today actually take place before school, during, and after the campus has been vacated. Taylor? Working with your school district communications office, whether you're in the Southeast or anywhere in the nation, is important. Now, some communications offices have some capabilities that others do not. That's not necessarily always a concern, because one thing that I've seen through many years of service with public education is our school districts work with each other very readily to support each other and to make sure that messaging does get out when needed. You see here some visual samples of items that you can find both on the website and social media for the school district that I'm currently on their school board, Greenville County, South Carolina. We have roughly 78,000 students, roughly 100 physical buildings, and roughly 10,000 employees. So you can see here various areas of communication that are being used to share with parents in the community related to back to school scheduling, what will be taking place related to making sure the school is safe, and also making sure that parents understand that when their children do eventually walk into the classroom and teachers eventually get back into the classroom, that it is a safe, clean, and secure environment. Taylor? So again, we want to emphasize that having a transparent conversation with your community builds support in the work that you're doing and faith that the students and adults that come back into these buildings will have a secure environment. One of the things that so often gets lost in the conversation are the related costs. Many folks in the community, many of our parents, and even staff members so often do not completely understand the cost of keeping our schools clean and safe and secure. So to use this as a simple example, let me give you some budgetary information from the district that I represent. Again, as I said earlier, we have roughly 100 locations with millions of square feet, thousands of acres of ground. And in our 2021 fiscal year budget, the basic services for cleaning and physical services will run a little over $2.1 million. But because of COVID-related issues, we have found it necessary to add another 1.5 million to make sure that the staff has the training, the supplies, and the equipment to maintain and adequately clean the buildings between classes, before school, and after. These are vital topics of information that you need to share with the community because they understand more readily the importance that you place as a school leader and as a supporter of public education in making sure that our children are in a clean and safe environment. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Bain Stewart with Greenville County, who will discuss some actual daily activities of what takes place in this area. Bain?
Thank you, Chuck, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here, and thank you for allowing me to speak with you today. I'm going to talk about some of the protocols and procedures we're going to be using this year that we've been working on this summer for our classroom and facilities cleaning. Of course, we follow CDC and DHEC guidelines, making sure we're using the proper grade chemicals. We utilize 4 basic manufacturers. We use 3M, Johnson, Spartan, and Franklin in our schools primarily. And we have for years as our basic cleaning chemicals, and we are enhancing our disinfecting with the addition of the Windsor Innovations electrostatic backpack sprayers, and we'll be utilizing a chemical in that known as Biotab 7. What this does, what we will do during the day, we'll make sure all touch surfaces, as you can see on the slide, clean the doors, door handles, then we can hit it with the sprayer to disinfect it. The Biotab 7 has a 1-minute kill claim, and it's inert when it dries, so it dries about 10 to 15 minutes. But our custodial crews throughout the day, especially in the office areas, they'll be coming through, making sure the handles are wiped down, and if need be, we will be spraying during the day after we'll have to get everybody out for about 15 minutes or so. We will be minimizing visitors to the building, so this may not be a big issue for the exterior doors as we go through the year and we get used to dealing with the COVID issue. The sprayer, you can, Taylor, you can go to the next one, please. As you can see, it's a backpack sprayer. We're showing the pictures of that, but this is after we have cleaned. You physically clean with a cleaner, and then the disinfect, you come back and spray it down. We hit everything with it. These are protocols we're putting in place. Like I said, in addition to what our normal daily cleaning would be in these areas, because we will be planning to basically disinfect the whole school every day after everybody leaves. That is what we expect our protocol to be as we move into the school year. And those photos just show them using, different areas of the school. In classrooms, as you see by the photo, this is a classroom we've got set up social distancing classroom. We've had to remove a lot of the extra things in the classrooms, especially in elementary schools, because I know as most of y'all who work in the schools, you know, they like to have chairs and lamps and sofas and pretty much anything they can fit in the room. But we're moving all that out so we can, you know, maintain a social distancing. And we'll go through our basic cleaning of the rooms that we do, you know, year in, year out. We'll sweep the floors, remove the trash, wipe down the countertops and sinks in the rooms that have them, make sure they're clean. And basically they're going to get a double disinfection because they'll get cleaned and disinfected as we go through the room. And then we'll take care of the pencil sharpener, the desks, wipe down all handles, make sure soap dispensers, paper towel holders, if they have them, are full and stocked daily. And at the end, when we're through, we will go through and hit it with our disinfectant sprayer. Now, currently, we will have people assigned. We'll have custodians who will do the cleaning, and then right now what we're working on is then we'll have somebody whose job it is to come behind them and spray the building. We're just having to work on some, you know, just getting people in the right positions and doing this. A lot of this will have to be done in the evenings late. Some of our larger high schools, I mean, our largest one pushes 350,000 square feet. And we know by doing testing this summer with it, it takes 2 men, 4 hours to spray that whole school. So it's a time consuming, but it's necessary and it's very effective. And it sure does beat having to go with a bucket and bleach is how it was when I first got into this industry. If we had a issue come up with a virus or a flu outbreak in a school where you end up with 40 or 50% of a grade level out for 2 or 3 days, and we had to go in and clean it, and that would be done by wiping down. Now with these sprayers, the time it saves and the efficiency of it is very good.
Bain, if I could, before you go to this slide, could you just repeat the brand or the type of the sprayer that you've depicted here just for our viewers? We had a few people ask.
I may have misquoted. It's a Victory Innovations electrostatic backpack sprayer. They are in high demand, believe me. We've got currently for our locations, we have 10 in our possession right now. We have 105 on order. It should be here within the next couple of weeks, well prior to school starting. And then we are ordering an additional 100, just so we have them in our building, you know, to help. Basically, it will cut down on overtime, and instead of paying the employees all the overtime and having those recurring costs, we buy the equipment and basically assign them to an employee. And we think with the ones we got coming in that we'll be able to maintain our cleaning and our protocols with our current employee staff to you know, help cut back on the overtime. They'll be able to get it done in an 8-hour shift.
Thanks, Bain.
We also we're turning off our traditional water fountains. They will be disabled. They won't be able to be used. And throughout the schools, we did a study. We're putting in bottle filling stations. We found that we've got 100 locations, and we did a survey earlier this summer with 30 of them had bottle filling stations, anywhere from 1 to 8. So we've gone in and we're going to make sure we have at least 3 in each location in strategic areas throughout the school. That way it'll cut down, you know, the water fountains are a germ grower, and the kids, especially the little kids, they probably put their mouths all over it. So we're just turning them off. We're not even going to have them be any issue this year. And we have purchased, I think it's 175 of the bottle filling stations too, and they are being installed as we speak. Restrooms throughout the day, we've been setting up plans. We will bring extra custodian in during the day to basically monitor the restrooms. They will walk the halls and check the restrooms as the day goes on to make sure if there are any issues, or especially like in a high school, if they're changing classes and, you know, people go in and out, we'll have to check them all between classes and just make sure they're cleaned. And if we had to, we shut it down, make sure it's sprayed down if something happened. We'll be doing our basic cleanings with the enhanced, with the sprayer, the sinks, urinal walls, dryers, all will be cleaned, wiped down. make sure all the soap dispensers and especially the soap dispensers will be checked and kept stocked all day long. And with everything and with any disinfectant, you have to the dwell time. Now the BioTab 7 has a 1-minute dwell time kill claim on the COVID virus. That's one of the reasons we're going with it, because it kills quick.
Thank you, Bain. This is a floor plan of a typical restroom in a school building, a gang toilet. In the lower schools, in the elementary schools, if you have classrooms, if you have restrooms in the classroom, encourage the use of those rather than lining the little kids up in front of the gang toilets as much as possible. As Bain said, you should create and monitor cleaning schedules. Use very durable materials within your new schools. Think about the cleaning and think about what Bain has just told you about how they're having to do things, and really think about using durable materials, as I know many of you are. You should limit the number of students in restrooms and do not let them congregate in there. There are no-touch solutions that Taylor's going to talk about in a minute that is going to be more specific, but there are no-touch solutions to be sure that as many of these fixtures as possible can be automated. Drinking fountains, as Bain said, are going to be changed out. They're either going to be disabled or they're going to be changed out in most locations to bottle filling stations, as he showed. Signage is really important so that people know where to go to communicate, know how to get in, how to get out. The CDC is recommending that many of the toilets have lids on them so that it doesn't spray back on somebody potentially. We'll see the practicality of that. Run the exhaust fans continuously to make sure you have air movement within the bathrooms. The queuing needs to be very obvious in the corridors with social distancing and the waiting. On the floor plan that you see here, the green dots indicate the social distancing. You can see the green dots with a 3-foot radius or 6 feet around that. The green dots, you can see we have used every other stall. And you can tell that cuts down on the effectiveness and the use of the toilets. But your local people and your local review agencies need to be consulted, because it's going to be different in each jurisdiction, I would guess. Interpretations of whether the petitions allow the social distancing or not. And so we have chosen this as a or not. And you also see the orange thing. If possible, it would be nice if the 2 stalls that you see with the orange lines would go to one sink, and then the other 2 would go to one sink. So there's some practical things that that we're trying to indicate here for just to help you. And then it's really important that you monitor these, and the doors would be open so that that's one less touch point for all of the kids to get into. Taylor?
Thank you, Paul. Well, here are a few touchless systems that you can use throughout your building to eliminate multiple touch points. As Paul said, you can keep doors open where privacy and security measures allow. Have the teachers open and close the doors as much as possible, and specifically to their classroom, because that would be the easiest place for them to handle that. And since you will be buying all new hand sanitizer stations, look at the option of touchless stations to be bought instead of using the hand pumps. Lastly, you can retrofit your current building to include other touchless systems throughout, and specifically in the restrooms. The key here is balancing your budget to determine what works best for your schools, because there's no one size fits all. No matter your budget, adding hand washing stations and hand sanitizer stations will be critical to mitigating the spread. Here are a few options that can be used. Hand washing stations will be the most costly, then floor stand stations, wall dispensers, and the least costly will be to have the traditional hand pump that sits on a table. Here you see the first floor up to an 800 student elementary school. A few places that you may want to consider having hand sanitizer and hand washing stations are in the restrooms, entry doors, entry points, large common areas, and in all classrooms. In this plan, you see 64 needed to consider for all these areas. Again, understanding your budget and space will be important to align with your needs. Al?
Might help if I unmuted. So as I transition to the final section that we're presenting to our participants today, I do want to say we've got a lot of questions and we are going to have opportunity to answer a lot of those. Just give you the preempt, Bain, you've got a lot of questions. But hey, while we're mitigating the spread of COVID-19, you know, from a facility management perspective, there have been three primary areas that we've had to encounter. You know, the physical distancing is the first part, and facility managers have had to work with school administrators to help find a balance between what the architectural layouts of the school shows and then how our occupants actually use those spaces. We're also having to focus on ventilation. You know, our facility managers are having to ensure that we have proper airflow and that our mechanical systems are designed and are operating at the code standards that they were designed at. But at the same time, we've got daily cleaning, and you've seen examples of hand washing, hand sanitizer stations, keeping bathrooms fully stocked, but that involves our facility managers as well as our custodial staffs. Next slide. So with that being said, you know, I want to talk a little bit about the ever-changing role of our custodians in this new normal of COVID-19. You know, as a former principal, I will tell you that the first class I took in leadership, the professor said to me, you know, there are two most important people. If you're a principal in a building or even a new teacher that you got to get to know, and that first person or persons are the custodians and the secretaries. They know everything and anything that is going on in a building during hours and even before and after school hours. Next slide. So our custodians with COVID-19, they're generally been behind the scenes. You know, many of our administrators don't even know they're evening custodians. You know, they're there during the day, but unless they're there for after hours activities, they may not even be in contact with them, but they are the hidden heroes in this COVID-19 pandemic that are going to be able to answer the call and be able to, again, mitigate the spread of COVID-19 within our buildings. So next slide. So with that being said, you know, custodians have not been in the forefront, but I can tell you that in working with our staffs, you know, we've got to work with our custodians to give them the skills and the training so that they can be on the front line and working with parents, volunteers, and even staff members on the effective cleaning plans that they are incorporating and how they're demonstrating that. You know, our custodians are used to cleaning generally after hours. They do very light topical cleaning during the day. They maintain the cafeterias, the bathrooms, but that world has been turned upside down where we need them to be very public during the day. They need to be cleaning all of the high touch areas, as well as they've got to be adequately staffed in the evening, because knowing that they have traditionally followed a model that they go do a deep clean and they're good for a little while. But with COVID-19, there really isn't a deep cleaning. It is a daily, ongoing, aggressive attack in wiping down all high-touch surfaces. You know, your deep cleaning days are really, for our custodians, are the days in which they try to do the regular custodial tasks that they're supposed to be doing that have nothing to do with COVID-19. So how do we go about that? We've got to ensure that our custodians, where language, education could be barriers, that we are training them, be it virtually, because physical distancing requirements prevent you from bringing in even medium-sized groups as we have traditionally done. Creation of videos, reinforcing, demonstrating, and helping our custodians understand that they too have to follow physical distancing requirements. You know, we talked a little bit about staffing. Our custodians who are used to taking breaks together, who are used to having lunches and dinners together, we have to treat them just as our staffs and ensure that they understand that they can't do things like that, because if one gets a positive test, the others may be self-quarantined to where that school may become paralyzed in being able to provide adequate cleaning, daily cleaning to those schools. We have to make sure that our custodians are provided with the resources, the tools, the cleaners, and the appropriate PPEs for the tasks that they're doing. You know, Bain showed the electrostatic sprayers. You know, one of the things that those tools are providing are ways in which they can effectively and efficiently clean in our schools. That allows them to expedite some of the processes, because this disinfecting has been tenfold to what they have generally done in years past. And in doing so, that allows them to do it efficiently. But if they have staffing issues, by having power sprayers of any form, it allows them to disinfect those classrooms to ensure that they are done on a nightly basis, which is, for most school divisions, has been the minimum standard that they're able to guarantee, because even cleaning during the day inside of classrooms, you know, elementary schools, some middles with teaming, you are able to clean in between movements of students. But at the secondary level, when you have schools that are 250 to 300,000 square foot, 85 to 90 classrooms with 4 to 5 possibly bell changes a day, custodial teams cannot get into those schools. And it is an all-out team effort, and everybody doing what they can to mitigate. Taylor even mentioned a strategy of, you know, having the teacher be the only one that opens a door in a classroom, so that you mitigate the number of people that are touching a door, because security requirements, you may have to close that door and open it as needed versus leaving it propped open. So it's really just revisiting. But for our custodial teams, you know, they're used to tried and true, the things that they've been trained on, and they're having to be retrained. But even the reprioritization of the tasks that they do, you know, some things that were very important may become second place, because disinfecting is the primary tool. And we have to help our folks understand that disinfecting is the number one task. Pulling trash, maintaining buildings so that they have the health standards comes first. Whereas floor care, scraping bubble gum off of tabletops, those things that we all have to do, those are going to be secondary and third prioritization items, because the disinfecting is what we've got to do. So again, they have to understand that and know that they're not going to be negatively penalized as an employee by reprioritizing and focusing. Ensuring that your custodial staffs, be it, you know, Chuck mentioned, we have large divisions and small divisions, and the resources that you have, they vary. The level of support service staff members that schools have vary. But working with the school health department of your school division and the local health district to ensure that they are on board with whatever plans that you have within your schools. You want to make sure that you're not doing anything that's counterproductive. But if there is a case of a positive COVID-19 within your school, which I think we will all experience at one point or another, that the custodians are fully aware of what the local health district requires, because what they're doing will help determine what level of quarantining might be necessary or not. Because if certain things are being done, it gives the health districts the ability, the flexibility to adjust on a case by case. So it's good to have that partnership. And again, our custodians have never played a part in doing that. But I can't stress that enough, that transparency of working together and sharing. Chuck mentioned the communication with staff and parents. It's paramount. You know, Maslow's hierarchy, those basic needs, we have to demonstrate to our parents that our schools are safe and healthy. So anything that you can put out there on social media, on the website, your school's cable channels, you've got to put that out there so everybody, parents, staff, fully are aware that we're cognizant as custodians and what we need to do to set their children up for success in a healthy environment. And again, I give those examples. So next slide. So, you know, this is a phrase that I've been using within my own school division, is that, you know, this is not an isolated issue where custodians are the only ones that are out there on the front lines. This is a situation where we as a world are doing everything we can to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. So I always say, it's everyone's responsibility to become quote unquote deputized custodians. We all have to learn how to do minimal cleaning because again, it's an ongoing task. Again, you clean a building in one night, an occupant comes in your building the next day, they have carrying COVID-19, everything that you've done pretty much is thrown out the door again, and you've got to re-clean. Hence, daily, regular scheduling as frequently as possible. And I think that working with your staffs, other than custodians, you have to let them know that they have the flexibility to multitask. And there will be times where they can clean, and there's times where teachers may not be able to clean because they have primary supervisory responsibilities. They have to monitor children and ensure that they're safe. So it's working with your staff to know that you're not asking them to clean as much as a custodian, but you're asking them to all pitch in. And I say teachers, I include instructional assistants, cafeteria workers, anyone that's within a building, from the principal down. Taylor?
Now we're just going to open up to questions.
All right. So with that being said, there are several, and I'm going to try to break this for our panelists into some nuggets. Let's talk about Bain, the sprayers. You see the questions. There's several that I think are very easy to answer, ranging from what's a price range of a sprayer, electrostatic sprayer? What's the lead time in today's, I will say, competitive market where everybody is buying custodial products? What is the lead time? What can you anticipate from your experience? And I know others and myself, we can weigh in as well, but I want to let you talk about a little bit about cost, lead time first.
Okay, the cost of the sprayer, the one that we're buying, well, it of course is varied based on the numbers you buy. We actually kind of got lucky because we bought 3 before the COVID started. We saw it, somebody showed it to us. I said, yeah, that's a good thing. Let's get a couple of them, see what we can do with it. And then we really liked it. We paid for those right at $1,800 a piece, but now on these, when we're ordering these hundreds, I'm getting them for $1,310 a piece, $1,310 a piece. Lead time on them, this order I just put in today, they said I will probably see those 1st of October. They say it's about 2.5 months out right now, and everything they're doing is going to new production. And so they also said, you know, you'll be very, very hard pressed to find spare parts if something goes wrong with them too. So, but yeah, they're in high demand, and you know, they'll cost you anywhere from $1,300, you know, to $1,800, $1,900, depending on how many you buy at a time.
So, and I appreciate that because I've experienced the same with our school division. The one thing I would say to our listeners is when you order these, there's some questions you have to ask. You know, all salespeople are going to say they can sell you something, but you've got to ask, what do they have on inventory and what is actually being manufactured overseas and shipped over? You know, can they give you 20% of your order today and give you the remaining 80% in 6 weeks? But you've got to work. If you're in a larger division and you have financial procurement folks that manage that process and it's not for you in facility management, you've got to work with those people to where if you just pass it to them to process the purchasing, the left and the right hand have got to communicate, because that lead time, what you're saying, it's been my experience, it's so true. And it's not just with $1,300, $1,500 electrostatic sprayers. It's with basic chemicals. It's with all custodial products because everybody is competing. You know, our custodial vendors who focus in the K-12 market, they've grown, they've expanded because they know that it's wide open right now. And it's just like going on Amazon and seeing where one supplier can give it to you overnight and the other one, it's, you know, you got to wait till August 15th. So again, I share that you got to be proactive. And you got to work with your finance folks because time is of essence. A supplier may have it today and not have it tomorrow because they're out there just trying to recover from their own financial losses from the beginning of this pandemic. So some additional questions. Let me jump into this and I'll let you follow up. You know, we're spraying everything and there's a variety of chemicals and products, but I think from an architectural and interior furniture fixture, what can we say about, you know, damaging products, finishes on cabinets, on doors? What experiences have you had, Bain, with that?
We haven't seen anything. I mean, the word spray is kind of misleading. It's more of a mist, a very, very, very fine mist And it doesn't, I've sprayed my own office with it. My office, if you saw my desk, you'd be like, okay, that's a good test. So, and it doesn't affect it at all. Once it dries, you don't even know it was there. And it's, you don't have to move things. Things don't have to be put up. Also, another question, a couple came up out, is the BioTab the only chemical? No. You have to check the disinfectant to verify that it has been approved for use in a sprayer or a fogger or a mister. Some have, some haven't. A couple other chemicals that we have in stock, if we need to go to them, Franklin has one. It's called Q128. It's approved. Vital Oxide is the brand name of another one. The BioTab, we like it because it's also can be used in kitchens. It can be used in food prep areas if we have to, whereas a lot of the others are not approved for that type of application. At our schools, we're going to stagger it. I'm basically going to try to have one sprayer for every 60,000 feet eventually of square footage in the building. So that'll put, we have 5 schools that are over 300,000, right at 300,000 plus square feet. So they're going to need 4 or 5 to keep them efficient in each of those locations. And they currently already run 3 shifts during regular school operation. Yeah. But yeah, the others, we got 100 locations and they'll be spread out through them. We'll also be supplying them to our bus centers because they'll be disinfecting buses at the end of every day too.
So the one thing I would add to that, Bain, is, when you select custodial products, some products cost more than others, but you do have to be aware of how you can use them and what type of equipment. But at the same time, and I failed to say this, but you need to really look at the safety data sheets. You need to look at what PPE is required. What is that dwell or kill time? Do you need to wipe it off after the kill time, or is it safe for human contact afterward? And I will say to all of our listeners, you need to look for products that you could spray and walk away, and that occupants can then come in the next day in a classroom and they can put their hands on that surface and it's okay. It's not, it's something that passes the muster with allergies and sensitivities. And there are products that are out there, and some of them may cost a little more, but they're going to allow you to allow others to possibly clean. Whereas if you buy certain products, your custodians may be the only ones that are allowed to use it because of the PPE requirements. So I just encourage you to do that. We got a question about the water fountains, be it replacing them. And Bain, you talked about turning some off, and I opened this up to Paul and to Chuck as well. What about code requirements about having a certain number of water fountains in buildings? What would you recommend to folks if they were embarking on what Bain did? Paul, Chuck, I'll throw it out to you guys. What recommendations would you give if a school division wanted to turn their water fountains off and then replace them with something else, or not just replace them and just turn them off and minimize their use?
Well, I think if I could, in the case that Bain's referring to, we're taking a standard water fountain down, putting a combination water fountain and bottle station in its place. What has been turned off is the mechanism where the child will drink from the fountain directly, because that's almost impossible to police and to clean after every use. So although you're turning the water fountain component off, the bottle station component for that unit is still in place. So you still have a water fountain mechanism in that structure. Now, again, to the point that we mentioned earlier, you need to verify those changes with your code, local code in the state of South Carolina. It's the Office of School Facilities. And in Virginia, North Carolina, and elsewhere, it's different bodies. But I would work from the belief that you're taking one model down and putting a different model up, but there is still a water station in that same space. Paul, would that be correct?
That is correct, and that is the optimum. And that is going to also be the most expensive that you can possibly do. And so I think that you've got to work with your code officials. There are emergency declarations. There are things that you can say, And also thinking about the reduced occupancy of the buildings, the number of fixtures that would normally be required and the number of drinking fountains that would normally be required are reduced. And so I would look at it as an emergency basis, and the drinking fountains would be a great place for this virus to be spread. And I think that's something that you really have to think about, is what are the most logical places for this to spread and how do you mitigate those? And I believe in most instances, the code officials will work with you and just include them in it. So they're in this big aha moment where they go in and they're just, taken off the wall or something. But, I'd include them, and that's part of the communication plan that you need to have with everybody. So I think there are ways to implement these things safely, effectively, and within the jurisdictions. But each jurisdiction is going to be unique, probably, and you need to really think about that.
And encouraging students, of course, to bring bottles every day of their own water that can be taken home every day and then cleaned at that point. And if you are able to cut back on some of your drinking fountains, then maybe use the drinking fountains, keep the drinking fountains on that can be closely monitored. If it's hidden in a bathroom, behind a bathroom wall, that's not easily monitored. So maybe one that's closer to an admin area or something like that would be a good option, and having that used to refill water bottles at that point.
And also just providing bottled water for students, just like we do after a hurricane or any of those emergency situations. I believe there are ways to do that.
So one other question that's kind of in alignment with code. Taylor, you talked about possibly closing off of sinks, some bathrooms. We build schools and we're required by code to have a certain number of lavatories, certain number of toilets. Any advice to give to folks as far as, do they need to work with their local building official or anyone if they're closing off bathrooms or the quantities? What are your thoughts on that? Just guidance so that they're still in accordance with code requirements as well.
Yeah, I think this is a similar situation where you're going to have to work with your local officials and your state officials and sort of have this emergency declaration allowance to figure out what a real solution for you is. And if you're going at half capacity, there may be additional options for that to be better enforced or easily enforced.
So with that, I'll just provide my response to one of the questions regarding fire code with the use of alcohol-based sanitizers, be it in non-sprinklered and even sprinkled facilities. I think that response is probably the same. You really need to work with your local building official to determine. Our transportation folks, they have federal regulations that basically say that I believe that you can't have more than 12 ounces of an alcohol-based sanitizer on a bus. It's a flammable material, just like you have on airplanes. So my answer to that is, if you're concerned about the quantity of alcohol-based sanitizers, look at the water-based sanitizer products that meet FDA requirements. It would be my comment in looking at that. But, the amount of paper, the amount of alcohol-based, there is a flammability issue that can occur. And some school divisions have actually banned that product and said that it has to be water-based. But in this day and age, I think anyone's looking for anything that's effective at this point, because you got to buy what you can at this point. As long as it's safe, you got to buy it. But anyone else want to jump in on that question? All right. So
one thing, Al, there was a question about, did we add additional custodians?
Yeah, that's where I was headed. Back to you with staffing. How are these electrostatic sprayers? Do they allow you to use less staff? Do you need more staff? How does that work? Because there's budget implications where a lot of schools are being said, need to hire more bus drivers, need to hire more custodians, more instructional aides to help out in the schools. What's been your experience with those sprayers and staffing?
Because of the efficiency they bring, it's once we can get everything in and spread out, our staffing, a little background here in Greenville, our economy's been booming, just wide open for the last few years. We've been struggling. We've been running based on our allocation. We've been down 25 to 35 custodians for the last couple of years over across the district. So I'd love to hire some more just to get back to where I'm allocated. But no, we're not planning to add on anymore. we're gonna make it happen with what we have. We've been this summer, we've been having small group training and expectation sessions with head custodians and plant engineers, just to make sure they understand what we're going to be needing from them and what the effort we're going to need from their people. Told them that, they're more than likely to be running into some overtime pretty consistently, especially starting out, because we don't know what's going to happen moving forward when we do kick back off. So yeah, I'd like to be able just to hire to get back to my regular allocation.
Yeah, I've experienced the same. I would say even in good times, we had transportation and custodial staffing shortages. And, some can say with the economy and what's happened with people in the food service retail industry, that there are people that are out there. But we've used the same, providing those tools and resources, because even with adequate staffing, we all know that people just get sick normally, but those rooms have got to be cleaned. But if there was ever a quarantine and staffs were limited, you do have to have an efficient way to be able to get into those rooms. An easy question, but asking about the spraying and the misting, can you spray it on papers that are left on desks? Is that one of those where it's kind of dicey? What can you spray?
Like I said earlier, I've done my own office. I've done all my supervisors that work under me, their offices, and no, we have seen nothing detrimental has come across. And we've been out in the schools, timing, testing, and we've got 100 locations that we plan on having to spray this fall starting. So, and those are issues that have come up. What does it do to paper? Does it damage toilet paper in the bathroom? Does it make it unusable? That type of stuff. And so, we've sprayed it directly on it and just seeing it doesn't. I mean, it's very it's a chemical that's pretty impressive for what it does. Plus, with the kill claim on it, it's 1 minute kill claim on the COVID, and we don't only just attack the surfaces. What they also do is they go down the hall and just unleash a mist, and just it looks like a cloud coming behind them. So we're trying to get everything. It's knock it out of the air. Most everything, the way we look at it, will be basically 6 feet and down, because most kids, till you get up to high school, middle school, but especially in elementary, are a little short. They're short, so the bulk of anything airborne is going to be lower. So we spray the hallways as we come down. We've sprayed cafeterias. We do the open air spaces, all of that.
Yeah. So with the cleaning, there's a question that I'll at least answer very topically, but it's about the emphasis on surface cleaning. But the fact that science is beginning to show that potentially it's more of an airborne virus. And then asking us about cafeteria usage and feeding schedules. And, what I'll say is, we had a webinar just last week talking about mechanical systems, use of UVC lighting and other technologies that may be able to assist. But I think that as far as using the cafeteria usage, my response would be to anyone, make sure that you are following what your State Department of Health, the USDA, is encouraging for congregating students in cafeterias or not, and just ensuring that if you are going to use large cafeteria, large spaces, that you're maintaining the CDC and your local state requirements for physical distancing. You're bringing kids in large groups, but there is, obviously when you eat, there are no masks being worn if your schools are asking or requiring students to do that. So you've really got to maintain that. But the distancing requirements are going to minimize the amount of usage you can have in your cafeterias. It's not going to be the only solution. You're going to have to look elsewhere. And again, from a cleaning standpoint, they are hard surfaces, and you're going to have to be very aggressive if you're using your cafeterias for eating, very aggressive in ensuring that those surfaces are cleaned between uses. But at the same time, you're providing ample distancing between children, especially at a very young age. Many school divisions are looking at feeding kids in their classrooms where it's allowable to minimize that movement, especially with younger children, where transitions are very difficult, obviously, that we've all experienced probably with our own kids. So I'm just culling through. There's a question about PPEs, how we're handling the acquisition of them for our custodians. Are we using disposable or reusable PPEs if the disposable products are limited? Any thoughts? Bain, Chuck?
What I've found is I've had a significant number that I've seen. They've gone and got the reusable themselves, fashionable face masks. A lot of them have. We've been purchasing since March, as many as we've got lots of them. That's all I can say. I couldn't give you a number. But yeah, and a lot of them are furnishing their own now because it's become like, I think, some kind of in thing for some of these people. They get the ones with their college logo on it, or with the, around here is Clemson. You see a lot of those. So, but yeah, we'll be providing masks.
Great. So Paul, let me ask you a question from an architectural standpoint. I mean, we're talking about a lot of just-in-time things, but what are some takeaways that you would say for our facility folks as they embark on either renovating or building new facilities, designing new facilities? What are some of the takeaways that you're talking with clients about, at least beginning to talk about in the new normal, be it, again, renovations and new construction, because not all of us ever build schools and add additions, but we do have to maintain our existing facilities. So what are some things that you would recommend to consider it down the road as we embark on this?
I think the first thing to really think about is the life cycle cost and the maintainability of materials you put in these schools. And there's always the tension between first cost and meeting the budget and having those types of materials that are going to last. When you use terrazzo floors, or we're using polished concrete in some places, as opposed to vinyl tile and some other things, that these things are going to last for long, long periods of time. And the surfaces that you put in the bathrooms for these cleaning and all of the things that you've heard Bain talk about is to really think about that. When we had the conference last week, we talked about some sustainable opportunities with the mechanical systems and the ability to change the filters and the type of filters and the type of mechanical system that means that you have to bring in. Has to do with outside air and the number of times you're able to meet the code and have those air changes within the building. And I think all of those things are important as you talk with architects and engineers and facilities people, and really be realistic about the first cost of your buildings, because in the environment we're in right now, 6 months ago, it was hard to get anybody to bid anything because they're all busy. Well, right now, let me tell you, people are calling us right and left wanting to bid stuff. And so it's a different day and a different environment. And the entire world in the construction industry, as Chuck will tell you, with MBCon has changed. And their protocols have changed, and the number of people they can find that want to work and can work have changed. The subcontractors coming from out of state, that's changed. And so just finding those workers and the type of projects that you're able to do are really, because I think you're going to see more renovations as coming up because of this COVID thing. And it has informed everybody about how what the new norm is going to be.
So Paul, you bring up a good point, talking about the purchasing of items and supplies. And Chuck, you talked about how your school division added, I think it was 1.5 additional million for custodial requirements related to COVID-19. I think a lot of the things I would say that we're doing today are going to become the new normal.
I would agree.
Yeah. What discussions as a trustee have you and your other trustees had as far as planning in the future? Because a lot of the things that are being asked of our facility managers and custodial managers, I think they're going to continue, even with the flu in the future, if there is a vaccination that we ultimately get for COVID-19. So what are your thoughts about budgeting and recurring budgeting for things that we're going to continue to do?
Well, and the recurring portion of that comment's the most applicable, because the 1.5 million that we added to the budget this year was non-recurring dollars. Those were dollars that we pulled from other resources and set those initiatives to one side to focus on giving our staff the tools that they need at $1,300 a pop to get the work done. And so between the equipment and the chemicals, the 1.5 million was a start, but it is not the end. I'm sure Bain can testify to the fact that the costs are going to rise. The manpower is going to be needed. And so it's incumbent on us now to identify the recurring dollars that we can use. But the 1.5 million that we asked for was a simple start. I think it's going to last just a portion of the school year. We wanted to get the school year opened, get the processes and protocols in place, then re-identify any additional funds that could very well be needed. So the short answer to that is the 1.5 million is a start, but it's probably not going to be the end.
All right, Bain, any final comments? Taylor?
One thing I wanted to mention too is something that's so inexpensive is signage, and that's something that can encourage personal hygiene and also social distancing amongst students. So I highly encourage the use of all of that. And CDC, they have signs that you can just easily print off and put up in your schools.
Very good. Well, I tell you, this has been a great hour of conversation and presentation. I'm looking at the clock now. We've hit our 1 hour. We tried to get as many questions as we could. So we thank everyone for participating. You know, on behalf of the Southeast chapter and our panelists, we do want to thank you for participating today and engaging in this dialogue. Just so that you know, this presentation and webinar, we're going to make it available as we have our previous ones on our website. And for participants, it will be emailed to you. But last but not least, I'd be remiss if I did not encourage anyone who's not an A4LE member to please consider joining. A4LE is an international association that exclusively promotes K-12 educational design. We've got individual and group memberships available. And as a practitioner myself, who's been in education close to 30 years and in operations for the past 15, I have found the resources in the state national conferences to be immensely beneficial in allowing me to follow educational design trends, best practices, as we try to employ a lot of these ideas into practice. So again, I want to thank all of our panelists today. Taylor, great job putting the presentation, pulling it together for us. And we hope to see everyone again for our next webinar. To be determined. Thanks. Have a great afternoon, folks.